The first cool breath of autumn whispered through the pines of northern Michigan, carrying the scent of wood smoke and decaying leaves. In the small, tight-knit town of Cedar Falls, where everyone knew everyone and secrets were a rare currency, Friday nights belonged to the Lumberjack's Lodge. It wasn't fancy. A low-slung building of weathered timber on the outskirts of town, its neon axe sign flickering a welcome against the encroaching dark of the surrounding woods. It was a place of pulled pork sandwiches, cold beer, laughter that echoed off the high-beamed ceilings, and the steady, familiar thump of country music on the jukebox. On the night of October 18th, that familiar comfort was shattered. The evening had begun like any other. Old Man Henderson held court at the end of the bar, telling his same fishing stories to a trio of tolerant newcomers. Sarah Jenkins, the town's head librarian and a woman whose quiet strength was known to all, shared a basket of fries with her husband, Ben, their hands intertwined on the sticky tabletop. A group of younger men, loggers and mechanics, crowded around the pool table, the crack of the balls a steady punctuation to the music. The air was thick with the warmth of bodies, fried food, and unspoken camaraderie. Outside, on the sprawling wooden deck that overlooked the swift, dark waters of the Cedar River, a different scene played out. It was here that the town's younger crowd gathered, braving the chill for a smoke and a moment away from the watchful eyes of their elders. Among them was Lily Chen, 22, her laughter like wind chimes as she teased her boyfriend, Mark Rinaldi, about his poor aim with a cornhole bag. Mark, 24, with hands calloused from his work as a carpenter, just grinned and pulled her close, planting a kiss on her temple. They were Cedar Falls' golden couple, childhood sweethearts who had never broken up, their future a shared, unquestioned map. At a table nearby, Leo, the Lion Maguire, 41, held fort. A former high school football star whose glory days had softened into a generous paunch and a career selling insurance, Leo was a beloved fixture. His voice was the loudest, his jokes the corniest, his heart, as the saying went, as big as the state of Michigan itself. He was buying a round of shots for his friends, his face flushed with happiness. No one noticed the dark sedan, its engine off, coasting to a stop in the gravel lot at the edge of the woods. No one saw the figure step out, a silhouette against the ink-black pines. The first sound wasn't a gunshot. It was the shattering of glass. A beer bottle, knocked from Leo's table as he stood up to tell a story, exploded on the deck boards. The sudden noise caused a brief, startled silence, a collective intake of breath. Then the world exploded. Pop, 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 pop. The sounds were flat, sharp, utterly alien in the rustic setting. They didn't register at first. A car backfiring? Firecrackers? The scream that followed a raw, primal sound of terror and pain erased all doubt. Chaos erupted on the deck. Chairs screeched and toppled as people dove for cover. The music from inside, a cheerful tune about trucks and love, suddenly sounded grotesque and mocking. The shooter was methodical, a dark ghost at the edge of the light, firing into the crowd with a chilling, detached precision. Lily Chen was the first to fall. One moment she was in Mark's arms. The next she was a crumpled heap on the rough wood, a dark, spreading stain blooming across the front of her yellow sweater. Mark's scream was not one of fear, but of utter devastation. He dropped to his knees, clutching her, his own world ending in a hail of splinters and gunfire. Leo Maguire, true to his nickname, reacted not by fleeing, but by moving. He lunged toward the source of the shots, a big, roaring target, as if he could tackle the danger itself. He took 3 rounds to the chest, his massive frame absorbing the impact before he crashed down like a felled tree, his body shielding a young waitress cowering behind a planter. The shooting lasted less than 15 seconds. By the time the last echo had been swallowed by the hungry woods, the damage was done. The shooter melted back into the darkness, the sedan's engine roaring to life and tearing away down Willow Creek Road, its tires spitting gravel. Inside the Lumberjack's Lodge, the music died abruptly as the bartender, a former Marine named Frank, killed the jukebox. The ensuing silence was heavier, more terrifying than the noise had been. It was broken by the sobs and panicked cries from the deck. Frank was already on the phone to 911, his voice a steady, grim contrast to the bedlam. Active shooter at the Lumberjack's Lodge. Multiple casualties. The suspect fled in a vehicle, west on Willow Creek Road. The nightmare had begun. The two victims who did not survive the attack were Lily Chen and Leo Maguire. Lily Chen was more than a victim. She was light itself. The daughter of Mei and Jian Chen, who had immigrated from Shanghai and opened the town's only Chinese restaurant, the Jade Dragon, Lily was the embodiment of their dream. She had just graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in graphic design and had moved back home, not out of necessity, but out of love. She was redesigning the restaurant's menu and website, filling the familiar space with her modern energy and ideas. She painted watercolors of the northern forests, her delicate brushstrokes capturing the strength of the pines and the fragility of the trilliums that bloomed in spring. Her death wasn't just a loss, it was the extinguishing of a specific, brilliant light that had been meant to guide Cedar Falls into a new, more beautiful future. The town grieved for her youth, her talent, and the love story with Mark that had been a local fairy tale since the 6th grade. Leo Maguire was a pillar. A man who had never left the town he loved. He coached Little League, organized the annual Thanksgiving food drive, and could be counted on to plow out the driveway of any elderly neighbor after a heavy snow. His insurance office was less a place of business and more a community hub, where people went to talk about the weather, their problems, and their lives. He was a husband to Maria and a father to 3 young girls, Sophia, Ava, and Isabella. His death left a hole not just in his family, but in the very fabric of the town's identity. He died a hero, his final act one of instinctive, selfless courage. But that was cold comfort to his girls, who would now have to navigate life without their laughing, bear-hugging lion of a father. The 4 wounded survived, but they were irrevocably changed. There was young Timmy Walsh, a college kid home for the weekend, who took a round in the shoulder. Brenda Schmitz, a nurse, was hit in the leg while pulling a teenager to safety. The other 2 asked for their names not to be released, their trauma a private burden they were not yet ready to share with the world. Their physical wounds would heal, but the psychological scars, the sound of the shots, the sight of falling bodies, the smell of blood and cordite would be a part of them forever. Within hours, the investigation, led by County Sheriff Evelyn Moss, a woman with a no-nonsense demeanor and eyes that had seen too much, had a name: Jesse Crowe. Security footage from a gas station 10 miles away showed a dark sedan matching the description. The driver, purchasing a full tank of gas and a black coffee just an hour before the shooting, was clearly identifiable: Jesse Crowe, 29. His face, captured in grainy high definition, was gaunt, his eyes hollowed out and dark, like 2 pools of shadow. He paid in cash and did not speak a word. The name sent a second, different kind of shockwave through Cedar Falls. Jesse Crowe was not a stranger. He was a local boy. He'd grown up in a rundown trailer on the wrong side of Willow Creek Road with a mother who worked 2 jobs and a father who was mostly a ghost, and then a prison inmate. Jesse had been quiet, intense, brilliant in school, but plagued by a simmering anger that everyone noticed and no one knew how to address. He was the kid teachers worried about, the one other parents warned their children to be careful around. He and Leo Maguire had history. Leo, 5 years older, had been a kind of unofficial mentor to Jesse for a brief, hopeful period. Seeing the boy's potential and his pain, Leo had gotten him a job doing odd jobs at his insurance office one summer, trying to give him a positive outlet and a few dollars in his pocket. It had ended badly. There was an incident involving missing money from the office petty cash. Leo, heartbroken and feeling betrayed, had confronted him. He hadn't pressed charges, a fact he'd reiterated to anyone who would listen in the years since, his voice always heavy with a regret he could never quite name. "I failed that boy," he'd sometimes say to his wife. "I didn't know how to reach him." After that, Jesse's path spiraled downward. Shoplifting, vandalism, a nasty fight at the Lumberjack's lodge itself that got him an 86 from the bar. He left town abruptly a few years ago, and most people had forgotten he ever existed. Until now. Sheriff Moss pieced together a motive. It was flimsy, a theory built on a decade-old grudge and circumstantial evidence, but it was all she had. The money incident with Leo. The public humiliation of being thrown out of the town's social center. A life that had clearly gone very, very wrong. In the warped logic of a damaged mind, Perhaps Leo Maguire had become the symbol of all of Jesse's failures and rejections. And Lily. A tragic case of the wrong place, wrong time. Collateral damage in a personal war against a ghost from the past. Jesse Crowe had vanished. His abandoned sedan was found 2 days later, torched to a metal skeleton in a remote quarry 50 miles away. He was a ghost, a whisper on the wind. The manhunt expanded from county, to state, to national. The FBI was called in. Tips flooded in from across the country. Sightings in Seattle, in Phoenix, in a Walmart in Nebraska, but all led to dead ends. Jesse Crowe knew these woods. He knew how to disappear. The grief in Cedar Falls curdled into fear, and then into anger. The story, picked up by state news and then by national cable channels, was framed in the simplest, most explosive terms: small town torn apart by local monster. Hero dies confronting mentally ill killer. The narrative was set. Jesse Crowe was a demon, an animal, a monster who had preyed upon his own. Sheriff Moss, under immense pressure, did something unprecedented. She petitioned the state to have Jesse Crowe added to Michigan's 10 most wanted fugitives list. The request was granted. His face, the gaunt, haunted image from the gas station, was now plastered on post office walls, news broadcasts, and digital billboards across the Midwest. The reward for information leading to his capture was set at $25,000. The hunt was on. For 2 months, Cedar Falls was a town under siege. Not by a physical army, but by memory and fear. The Lumberjack's lodge remained closed, its patio a silent, haunting crime scene behind yellow tape that slowly frayed in the wind and rain. People locked doors they had never locked before. They looked over their shoulders in the grocery store. The cheerful holiday decorations that went up in November felt like a mockery. Thanksgiving was a somber affair. The community was fractured, its heart pierced by loss and its spirit poisoned by the unknown. Mark Rinaldi became a ghost of his former self. He moved through the days in a numb haze, haunting the Chen's restaurant, where May and Jian moved like silent, broken automatons. He'd sit at the counter for hours, not eating, just staring at his hands, which had once held Lily. He stopped working. He stopped talking. His grief was a physical presence, a shroud that chilled the air around him. Maria Maguire had to be strong for her girls. She put on a brave face, but at night, alone in the bed she had shared with Leo, she allowed herself to crumble. The anger was her anchor. She clung to it. She gave interviews, her voice trembling with a fury that the news cameras loved. He is an animal. He needs to be found. He needs to pay for what he did to my husband, to those girls, to this town. Her pain was the town's pain, and it fueled the collective thirst for justice, for vengeance. Sheriff Moss, however, was growing uneasy. The case was too clean. The motive, while plausible, felt thin. A decade-old grudge over a few $100s? It didn't fit the precision of the attack. And the ballistics report showed something strange. The shell casings on the deck were from a 9mm handgun, a common weapon. But the round that had killed Leo Maguire, the one recovered from his body, was a different caliber. It was a .45 ACP. It was possible the shooter had 2 weapons, but it niggled at her. A detail that didn't fit. She kept this detail quiet, a secret she held close. The town, and the world, didn't want ambiguity. They wanted a monster. They had one. As the first heavy snows of December began to blanket Cedar Falls, muffling the world in a cold, silent hush, the investigation grew cold. The tips dried up. The national news crews packed their satellites and left, chasing the next tragedy. Cedar Falls was left alone with its grief, a wound frozen under ice. Christmas Eve. The snow fell in thick, relentless flakes, painting the pines in heavy white and turning Willow Creek Road into a faint, impressionistic trail. Inside his small cabin, a mile past where the pavement ended, Elias Crowe listened to the wind howl. At 75, Jesse's uncle was a relic. A Vietnam vet who lived off the grid, a man of few words and deep, unspoken regrets. His connection to the town had been severed years ago. The only thing that tied him to it was his brother's son, Jesse. A frantic banging on his door, so hard it shook the frame, jerked him from his thoughts. It was near midnight. No one came out here. Elias grabbed his rifle and approached the door cautiously. "Who's there?" A voice, weak and rasping, barely audible over the wind. "Uncle Eli. It's me. Jesse. Please." Elias yanked the door open. The figure that half fell, half stumbled into his cabin was barely recognizable as human. It was a skeleton wrapped in rags, shivering violently, its skin pale and waxy. Jesse Crowe. But the eyes. The hollow, haunted eyes from the gas station photo were now wide with a terror so profound it was like looking into an abyss. He was bleeding from a wound in his side, the dark stain seeping through his thin jacket. "They're coming," Jesse rasped, collapsing onto the rough-hewn floor. "He's coming. He knows I'm here." Elias bolted the door and knelt beside his nephew. He tended to the wound from a graze from a bullet. It looked infected and angry. He wrapped him in blankets, forced hot broth between his chattering teeth. For a long time, Jesse just shook, his eyes fixed on the door as if expecting it to explode inward. Finally, his story poured out in a broken, feverish torrent. He had been at the Lumberjack's lodge that night. He had come back to town, broke, desperate, and ashamed. He'd heard Leo Maguire was still there, still the town's favorite son. He was going to ask him for help. One more chance. He'd parked at the edge of the lot, working up the courage to go inside, to face the man he'd wronged. "I saw him, Uncle Eli," Jesse whispered, his voice cracking. "On the deck." Leo was laughing, buying drinks. "And then I saw the other one." "Who, Jesse? Who did you see?" "In the trees. Right behind my car. A man. Dressed all in black. He had a rifle. I thought he was hunting. But then he raised it, toward the deck. I ducked down. I heard the glass break and then the shots." Jesse described it all. The flat, shocking reports. The screams. The figure, calm and efficient, firing methodically into the crowd. Then, the shooter turned. He'd seen Jesse, a witness cowering in the driver's seat of his car. Their eyes met for a split second in the darkness. He started toward me. I panicked. I started the car. I heard a thunk against my door, a bullet. I just slammed it into gear and got out of there. I saw his face, Uncle Eli, in my headlights. I saw him clear as day. "Who was it, Jesse?" Elias asked, his own heart hammering against his ribs. Jesse's next words were a breath, a confession that rewrote everything. "It was him. It was Frank. Frank. The bartender. The former Marine. The hero who had calmly called 911. According to Jesse, Frank had a secret. A big one. For years, Frank had been running a sophisticated drug operation, using the remote back roads around Cedar Falls to move product. Leo Maguire, the community pillar, the insurance man who knew everyone's business, had stumbled onto it. He'd found discrepancies in the lodge's books, strange shipments that were never logged. Being Leo, he hadn't gone to the sheriff right away. He'd gone to Frank, his friend and employee, to ask him about it. To give him a chance to explain. He'd given Frank an ultimatum: shut it down and come clean, or Leo would. Frank had chosen a third option. The shooting was a masterpiece of misdirection. A mass shooting with a patsy. He'd known Jesse was back in town, knew his history with Leo. He'd planned it all. He would eliminate Leo, the threat to his operation, and frame Jesse, the perfect fall guy, all in one bloody, chaotic act. The different caliber bullet in Leo? That was Frank's rifle, the weapon of a trained Marine, ensuring his primary target did not survive. The 9mm, a weapon he could later plant on Jesse, was for the rest. Jesse had been running ever since. He knew no one would believe him. The town's angry monster, accusing the town's calm hero? He ditched his car and fled into the woods he knew from his childhood, living like an animal, waiting for a chance to prove his innocence. Frank, the hunter, had been searching for him ever since, needing to tie up the only loose end. "He found my camp tonight," Jesse said, his energy fading. "Shot at me. I barely got away. He knows I'll come to you. He'll be here." Elias Crowe looked at his nephew, not as the monster the world saw, but as a terrified, wounded boy. He believed him. Every word. The story was too insane, too detailed, too horrifying not to be true. The old man stood up. He walked to his gun cabinet, not for the rifle, but for a heavy, old-fashioned revolver. He checked the cylinder. He picked up his landline phone, the only link to the outside world, and dialed a number from memory. The phone was answered on the second ring. "Sheriff Moss." "Evelyn," Elias said, his voice gravelly and calm. "You need to get out to my place. Right now. And you need to come alone." "Elias? What is it?" "It's Christmas Eve. It's about the shooting at the lodge. I have your witness. And you've got the wrong man." Before she could respond, the sound of an engine, grinding its way through the deep snow, cut through the night. Headlights swept across the cabin's windows. "He's here," Elias said quietly, and hung up. The door didn't burst open. It was a calm, deliberate turn of the knob. Frank stepped inside, brushing snow from his jacket. He looked the same as he always did behind the bar. Steady, capable, his eyes scanning the room. They landed on Jesse, cowering on the cot, and then on Elias, standing calmly by the wood stove, the revolver held loosely at his side. "Elias," Frank said, his voice even, friendly even. "I'm glad I found you. I've been worried. I heard Jesse might be headed this way. He's dangerous. You need to step away from him." "I know what you did, Frank," Elias said, his voice low and without accusation. A simple statement of fact. Frank's friendly mask slipped for just a fraction of a second. A flicker of cold, calculating menace. Then it was back. "I don't know what he's told you, old man, but he's sick. He's a killer. He murdered Leo. He murdered that sweet girl. He saw you," Elias said. "He told me everything. The drugs. Leo found out. You're setting him up." Frank's hand slowly drifted toward the back of his waistband. "And you believe the town is crazy over me? The Marine? The guy who called 911? Come on, Elias. Be reasonable. Step aside. Let me take him in. It's the right thing to do." The cabin was filled with a terrifying silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire and Jesse's ragged breathing. The two men stood frozen, a standoff between the old world and the new, between truth and a meticulously constructed lie. Then, from outside, a new sound. The crunch of tires on snow. A single set of headlights, and then the opening and closing of a car door. Frank's eyes darted to the window. His plan was unraveling. He made his move. His hand came up from his back, a sleek, modern pistol now pointed at Elias. The blast from Elias's revolver was deafening in the small space. It wasn't aimed at Frank. It was aimed at the cast-iron wood stove next to him. The bullet sparked off the metal with a shower of orange light and a horrific clang. Frank flinched, his shot going wide, splintering the door frame. In that split second, the cabin door flew open. Sheriff Evelyn Moss stood there, her service weapon drawn, her eyes taking in the scene in a nanosecond. Frank, with his gun out, pointed at an old man and a wounded boy. "Frank, drop your weapon. Now!" she yelled, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Frank hesitated, his eyes wild, calculating his odds. The lie was over. The truth was in the room, in the terrified eyes of Jesse Crowe, in the steady, grim gaze of the sheriff, in the smoking barrel of Elias's gun. His own weapon clattered to the floor. The aftermath was not a celebration. It was a quiet, somber reckoning. The evidence against Frank was overwhelming once they knew where to look. A hidden cache in the woods behind the bar held the rifle, the 9mm, ledgers detailing the drug operation, and a burn phone with incriminating messages. He confessed quickly, his arrogance crumbling into a cold, detached recitation of facts. Leo had become a liability. Jesse had been an opportunity. The community's trust had been his perfect camouflage. For Cedar Falls, the truth was a second earthquake, more destabilizing than the first. The monster was not the estranged, angry boy from the wrong side of the tracks. The monster had been serving them beers, listening to their problems, sharing their laughs. The betrayal was so deep, so personal, it left the town reeling, questioning its own judgment, its own heart. The apology to Jesse Crowe was a quiet, profound, and deeply painful process for the town. It was led by Maguire. She went to him where he was recovering in the hospital, under guard until the official exoneration paperwork was complete. She didn't say much. She just took his hand, the hand of the man she had publicly vilified, and held it. Her tears were for her husband, for the horrible waste of it all, and for the pain this broken man had endured. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "He would have believed you. Leo would have believed you." It was the truth, and it was the greatest tribute she could pay to her husband's memory. Mark Rinaldi visited too. He stood in the doorway of Jesse's room for a long time, his own grief a heavy cloak around him. "He took her from me," Mark said, his voice hollow. "He took her from us." At that moment, they were not accusers and accused. They were two men destroyed by the same evil. A shared, silent understanding passed between them. Months later, on a bright, clear day in spring, the town gathered once more at the Lumberjack's lodge. The "for sale" sign was gone. The new owners, a consortium led by Maguire and the Chen family, had renovated it. They had rebuilt the deck, but they had not tried to erase the memory. In a quiet corner, they had erected two simple, beautiful brass plaques. Asterisk in loving memory of Lily Chen. Her light remains our guide. Asterisk. Asterisk in honor of Leo, the lion Maguire. His courage remains our strength. Asterisk. The grand reopening was not a raucous party. It was a potluck. People brought casseroles and pies. The jukebox was silent. Instead, someone brought a guitar, and they sang quiet songs. The laughter was softer, more grateful. Jesse Crowe stood at the edge of the crowd, Elias by his side. He was thinner, older, his eyes still carried the shadows of his ordeal, but they were no longer hollow. They were present. Sheriff Moss had offered to let him leave, to start fresh somewhere far away with a new identity. He had refused. "This is my home," he'd said simply. "The truth is here. Leo's memory is here. My chance to be better is here." As the sun began to set, painting the Cedar River in hues of orange and gold, Mark Rinaldi walked over to him. He held out a cornhole bag. "Are you any good at this?" Mark asked, a tentative, fragile smile on his face. Jesse looked at the bag, then at the deck, then at Mark. He saw the immense effort it was taking for this man, who had lost everything, to offer this small gesture of peace. "No," Jesse said, returning the faint smile. "But I'm willing to learn." He took the bag. Together, the two men, bound forever by a tragedy they did not cause but were forced to survive, walked toward the deck. The first throws were awkward, the bags landing short. But they were trying. The soft thud of the bags hitting the boards was a new sound, a better sound, to mark the evening. It wasn't a happy ending. The ghosts of that October night would always walk the streets of Cedar Falls. But as the community gathered around, watching the two men play their clumsy game under the emerging stars, a new feeling took root. It was the feeling of a wound, finally clean, beginning to heal. It was the quiet, powerful conclusion that after the storm, after the long, dark winter, the sun would always rise again. And with it, the chance for redemption, for forgiveness, and for a peace, hard-won and deeply cherished, to finally settle over the town once more. For more chilling true crime stories, subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like and share. Thank you.